G'day guys, Ziggy D here. How's it going? Welcome back for Exiled, the very, very infrequent podcast, but resurrected by the powers that be of Rory Rackham. How you going, Rory?
Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm doing good. I'm doing great.
It's good to have you here, man. Thanks for taking an hour out this close to a new expansion release, which is super busy. How have you been going with it?
It's super busy. You hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of stuff, and there's some things still to do, but we're going to get it wrapped up in time, and it's going to be awesome. And what we've got already is amazing, so it's going to be a good expansion, I think.
I'm pretty excited about the very in-depth endgame focus of this expansion, because it should be pretty juicy for longevity. We just had that update to the leveling process, and now we're getting the endgame kind of 1-2 punch. Yep. How much did you guys freak out when, like, Chris announced that you guys are going to be doing back-to-back expansions, or have you known for a while?
He did promise that this one was going to be much more relaxed for development than the last one, which was a lie, but we had a moment of thinking it's going to be nice and calm, but yeah.
It was a lie. Called out, Chris. Throwing shade here. Jeez. Beautiful, beautiful. So, Rory, for those people who don't know you very much, though we've had you on the show a couple times now, what is it that you do? You're a senior game designer at GGG, and what does that involve, and what do you mainly work on?
It mainly involves working on the development of just about everything that goes into the game, from the gameplay side of things anyway. So we are involved in coming up with what the leagues are going to be, what the expansion is going to be to an extent, although the lead devs like to take charge on that stuff. And then we're in charge of making sure it's good from that point onwards. So I'm doing the setting up the new skills, and the Abyss League was my primary focus this expansion. And I've also been, working with the balance team and stuff, making sure everything's fun and balanced. Yeah.
And the Abyss League and the new skills are primarily what we're going to talk about today, though we might touch on more Atlas because you had a little bit of a hand in that.
Sounds good.
We'll see. And we've also got some new stuff that you've kindly brought along to show off as well, including a new unique and the Reflect rework, but shh, don't tell. Secrets. Secrets. So let's jump in first. I would like to talk about the Abyss League.
Sure. Okay.
So we had the initial reveal of the expansion, but it only had a little snippet of Abyss League.
Yeah.
So the focus definitely being on the expansion first and foremost, which makes sense. And then just a little snippet on Abyss League. But what we've seen has us intrigued because it looks a bit like Breach. So firstly, I'd kind of like your explanation of how Abyss League works to begin with.
So how a player will experience Abyss. When they're in the Abyss League, occasionally they'll come across a chasm in the ground, a small crack, and as they approach it, it will start to sunder the earth. You'll see a crack traveling along, and monsters will start pouring out. At first, you'll just get small monsters coming out in waves, but then suddenly the earth will erupt in a gigantic chasm, and large monsters will come pouring out. Some very dangerous rares and some regular monsters. The rares all have a special mechanic where as their minions die, they absorb their souls, and they use that to fuel their ultimate abilities. So they've got some special stuff going on. So you can see when the bosses, well, when the rare is about to power up to do something nasty. And then when you destroy that chasm, then the earth cracks some more, and eventually you end up with a much larger chasm. And when you defeat the larger wave of monsters coming out of that, then you'll get a special chest at the end that you can open up that has some items, including the new Abyss Jewels and sometimes an Abyss Belt. And very rarely later in the game, that final chasm, rather than opening up to a chest, will open up to a hole in the ground that you can actually travel down to an underground area. And that's where you'll fight the sort of the in-game-ish content of the Abyss League. In maps, you'll be able to fight the liches that maybe are responsible for the abysses themselves, and they will drop the league uniques. So that's the only way to get the league uniques.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Does the league uniques include like unique versions of jewels, or we don't know yet, or it's a secret?
There won't be any unique jewels, but all of the league uniques interact with the jewels in some way. So they make getting great rare jewels all the more important.
And there's new bases as well, right, that have the sockets. Like I saw a socketed belt, for example, that wasn't a unique.
Yeah, there's just the belt. That's the one place on your gear you can get. You can have a rare or magic item that has an Abyss socket. And we determined it to be very powerful, so we're not going to be putting it on any more items except for the uniques.
I thought I heard something about like being able to. Oh, yeah, that's right. The uniques has one abyss socket on them, so you can get them like potentially on boots if there's a unique pair of boots that has an abyss socket.
Yeah, they usually have one socket. I'm not going to say any more than that though.
Okay, all right. So many questions, Rory. Oh my god, you blew my mind on that explanation.
Should leave some stuff for you to discover in the week.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say. So you mentioned powering up and ultimate abilities. Any
yes.
on that?
There is just they have some very dangerous abilities that they won't use right away. You've got to be careful of when they've gained spirit charges from their allies. Then you've got to be wary that they might pull off something that you'll need to definitely move around and evade. Kind of like a big boss ultimate ability that you've got to mitigate.
So are you saying that they're using Val skills and that they're getting new Val skills, but we aren't, Rory? Is that what you're saying? Because they're consuming souls to power up these abilities. I'm just kind of pointing that out.
The from the Abyss predate the Val, so maybe the Val got inspired by this, by spirit charges. You'll have to ask the historians that have probably...
I like that headcanon. It's like the Val kind of like learned from the Abyss creatures. A little bit of lore kind of stuff here. That's official now. You guys are going to write that in. I like that quite a bit.
Just what I've heard on the streets of Oriath. I wouldn't take it for granted, but...
So you follow this like series of cracks into these like chasms, and then there's like a chain of chasms if you do well. Is there like a failure state here where you don't make it to the final chasm?
Yeah, the chasms, the cracks start to close up behind you, so you need to be moving faster than them, and you need to be clearing out these chasms before the crack catches up. We're still doing some tweaks to making sure the balance is just right, that they're not too challenging for a new player, so they still get to experience the chasms all the way through. But then later on, in late game maps, then it's going to be a real race to the finish.
Cool, okay. That sounds a bit like what you guys did with the design of the Breachlord maps, where you had a bit of a timer and you had to kind of push against that. How much of Breach has kind of gone into this or inspired the work on Abyss?
It definitely, we wanted to capture the intense combat of Breach, really. The intense combat and the feeling that you're being rewarded by just the sheer number of monsters and the sheer quantity of drops you get from that level of monster input. We tried to make it feel very different in terms of how the mechanics work, but a lot of the more we iterated, the more it's like, oh yeah, Breach did that right. Let's just do the same thing Breach did for this particular mechanic, like having the tough champion rares. As the ones that are the focus of combat.
Yeah, I mean, well, Breach was very, very popular, so definitely I can see that happening, but I think like one of the big things that made Breach popular was that it felt like the mobs were giving you a real fight. Like you actually, a lot of the time you're just kind of running through a map and it's just like the mobs melt before you once you've got your character established. And while that's fun in its own way, we kind of want a decent fight every now and then, and Breach was giving us that by sometimes overwhelming you and like, oh, I have to get out of here, like it's too much.
Yep.
Does that, because this is kind of like a little crack where monsters are spawning along, do you still kind of get that, or is that like why you have these kind of chasms that you get to where it's a bit more
That is really what the chasms are about, yeah.
Yeah.
The cracks are a teaser or a taster, or maybe a way to refill your flasks if the last chasm was a real challenge, but yeah. The big fights come in each chasm, and there's waves of monsters, so it lasts a reasonable amount of time. Not each chasm isn't as long as a full Breach; it's sort of more a portion of it, but you can get very large chasms right at the very end of the Abyss.
Okay, so my interpretation here, which may be a little lackluster, but basically Breach got linked to the chain support gem.
Yes.
I like the sounds of that.
The fact that the monsters are coming out from a point rather than from all sides changes combat quite a lot.
Right.
But in a different way, I'd say. Yeah.
Good stuff. So you mentioned that rarely there'll be this portal that will open. How rare are we talking here? Like, do you have kind of like how many? Usually when I talk to you guys about that sort of stuff, you're like, we expect people to run into them this many hours on average or something like that.
So there's two different kinds. One is the kind that just has a special. Well, I'll leave it to you to discover. There's something for you to do at the end, and then the other one has the Lich boss itself. The ones that you have something to do at the end, you're coming across fairly frequently, like more frequently than you've come across the rare mechanics in other leagues. But the Liches are going to be quite rare. They'll always drop the Breach unique, so
Right.
we'll get them as often as you would be expecting to get a high level league unique.
Something I'm just realizing here is that all the other leagues that had sort of like a big boss encounter that you go to were usually done through some sort of itemization system that you could trade with other players. Was that like a conscious decision here to make this specifically involved with your play rather than your ability to like buy things and economically get yourself into those boss fights?
Yeah, we just wanted to try out a different experience where there's nothing you're collecting other than the actual rewards. It's not like a filling up your inventory league, especially after all the shards that were filling up your inventory in Harbinger.
Right. Easing off the inventory clutter a little bit for a league. I like that. Give us a little break. That sounds good.
And the
A bit
fact
less
that
picking up.
there's a big in-game league, a big in-game expansion alongside it means that there's plenty of things for you to work towards actively, and then the Abyss is something that you enjoy when you come across it while trying out the new in-game content.
I'm seeing some all caps thank yous in chat regarding the inventory clutter, so I think that was probably a good choice. So one thing I'm curious about here is how does Abyss influence like leveling versus the end game? So end game, we're trying to encounter these liches, like we're trying to get these and hope that there's a lich at the end, otherwise get some cool jewels and roll those jewels. What about for leveling? Because we've had some of these leagues play a really big role in leveling, whereas some are a bit more end game focused. What about for Abyss?
It's definitely a boost to experience, and it's definitely worth sticking around, especially if the Abyss is going the same way you're going. You just want to follow it along and make the most of it. They are quite linear in how they travel. Like, I mean, they're crafting along the ground, so you're definitely going to be just wanting to follow it along if it's going the right way. And most of the time, it'll be rewarding enough to stick with it. But yeah, you're going to come across them fairly frequently. The jewels actually make a huge difference to leveling because they're like, very early you get jewels, and the belt base type is great because you can keep socketing the jewels even if you don't have jewel slots in the passive tree yet. So, and because they have a lot of flat mods, you want to keep finding ones and keep upgrading them, but they're a big damage boost every time you get them. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the jewels look really strong, but especially earlier on because they're flat totals, which because the way jewels work, they only have one tier of mods. I assume these are the same, right?
There are multiple tiers of all the different flat mods. There's a low tier life mod, and then right at the very highest level, there's the highest tier life mod. So getting the best possible life Abyss jewel requires doing very late game maps.
Oh, okay, that's interesting, because we don't have tiers on the existing jewels, so this will be a new kind of tiered approach, and that'll be divided by levels, like actual character levels or item levels as well, right?
Yeah, the jewels will have level requirements based on their mods, so it's the same base types throughout, but the mods determine the level of the jewel, so yeah.
Alright, so that's good advice for people. Make sure you're paying attention to the item level of the Abyss jewels before you get them, because that's going to play a role. Okay, that's good to know. The jewels seem really strong, though.
There's some cool mods, yeah.
How have you guys been considering the balance of these in terms of power? Because are they just like straight up stronger than what you can roll on regular jewels, or is it a bit more of a different pool, kind of?
It is a different pool because they're added. The Abyss jewels are added, and regular jewels are percentage increases on all the damage mods anyway. You kind of want a mix of the two of them for the best possible damage output. Some builds will still prefer the full increased value. One of the things we were looking at carefully is face breakers, because obviously added fizz is what they're all about, but the percentage increases from the jewels, like by that point, by the time your character has lots of added damage anyway, were almost more important than the added damage from the jewels. So it has a way of equaling out, but we've basically balanced them against rare jewels. We want to say, is it okay to switch out between them? Will you never use a rare regular jewel? Then that's a problem if you're always using Abyss jewels for everything. So you'll probably want to mix, but it's going to be easier to find Abyss jewels in this league than it will be rare jewels, the regular kind of jewels. So, yeah.
Right, okay, yeah. And I mean, this is a league mechanic, so this is not potentially not permanent unless this league gets rolled into the core game, which,
Yeah.
given that Breach didn't, seems kind of unlikely, I'd imagine, but there's probably
We'll
too
see how
early
it
for you.
goes. Yeah, well, it depends on the popularity and whether we need to make tweaks or not. But hopefully. I'm hoping so, considering how awesome it looks when it happens.
Okay, alright.
Yeah.
Is there any other kind of like little secret bits that you want to drop, or favourite parts of the Abyss League before we change to the next topic?
I'd rather let you all discover it for yourselves. It's more fun to watch that way.
I thought that might be the case. So, pretty hype. Now I'm gonna be we're gonna talk about the new unique you've brought for us to look at today.
Yep.
Thanks for that, by the way. Let me bring this up right here.
Hopefully you enjoy it. Yeah.
Bam! We have Corralito's signature Diamond Floss. Let me just read out the flavor text, and then maybe you could take it away in terms of explaining what this thing is.
Sure.
What cruelty it is that to be judged as success. Such great work must go uncredited. By Corralito Brotherhood of Silence, which we've not heard from before.
Yeah, so this unique started with the art and the theme. Like, this is a developer unique, and so it went in. Usually we start with we're wanting items for a league, or we're wanting a supporter wants a certain thing from an item, so we're going for that. But this was a flavorful design upwards, but we created something. We started off with a very basic, hey, this buffs your poison while it's active, but during design we wanted a niche for it, a role, that's something it does that's special. So the design goal became a flask where you want to care about crits most of the time on your character for killing regular enemies, but when you come across a tough enemy, you can use this flask and sort of switch to focusing entirely on the poison crits. So now, because your poison has time to work, you can do a lot more damage with it. So that's the thing with the flask, the special.
So, okay, that's a pretty interesting point, because that kind of exploits a weakness in... maybe exploit's a bit of a strong word, but it takes advantage of like a weakness in dot builds where when you're killing trash mobs, you really want to be front-loading your damage and just killing them in one hit and clearing the screen. But then when it comes to yeah, exactly. But then when it comes to bosses, stacking those dots is where you can get like some serious DPS, as we've seen in the past. So that's the idea here. It's like an on-off switch for boss killing versus trash clear in terms of perfect agony and dot boost. So that was kind of the idea there, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of flavor on it as well, with the damage taken per second, just as a cool thematic thing to go alongside it. It's not so much damage that you can't handle it, but
yeah, it's not like a deadly poison like some of the other flies. It's more of like a mild tummy ache, maybe. Just kind of run to the bathroom every now and then, kind of like it's like, that was a little undercooked. That Corralito's signature.
I didn't think of it that way, but
too long.
Yeah.
It's like that milk is a little bit off. Smell that. So we got 25% chance to poison here, so I can help you cap that poison chance out. It's got critical strikes do not deal extra damage during flask effect, and then it's got perfect agony during flask effect. So basically the same effect as perfect agony there.
Yeah. And originally the design was it doesn't do any hit damage at all, but it turns out the game code says you can't poison if you don't hit. So we changed it to no extra damage instead.
That was a bit extreme.
Yeah.
And then it's got an increased duration of poisons during the flask effect as well. So it's giving you poison, amping up your poison, and then giving that perfect agony and switching your crits off for the regular upfront damage. Just to clarify for people that critical strikes do not deal extra damage is only for the upfront damage. The crit multiplier for damage over time effects or something like that. Crit multiplier for ailment. I can't remember. It's a really long name.
Whatever it is that perfect agony gives you gets the full benefit from it.
Yeah, that's a separate stat entirely. So there you go. There you go. Well, thank you for the unique reveal. I'd like to jump into skill gem discussion now, since you did a lot of work on these guys, I believe, correct?
Yeah. Yep. There was the corpse skills were sort of something I'd wanted to do for a while, and this league was decided to be the one that we're gonna do them all at once to introduce new build style. So we've got a handful of new skills that interact with corpses. Yeah,
so the necromancy or necromancy, depending on how you like to take that. slash corpse interaction skill. Was this just something, like you said, you've been wanting to do for a while, or was there a particular reason that you feel like this is kind of like a gap missing or something?
Yeah, the two kind of skill directions we go are either opening up a new play style or enhancing an existing one further. And this one was really, we looked at the Detonate Dead, which hasn't really seen much play for a while since Ignite double dipping was what it was all about. And so we wanted to bring that skill back, and alongside it bring some supporting skills, bring some more things you can do with the build, while keeping the Detonate Dead. Yeah, we tried to keep the Detonate Dead theme going, where they're doing the same kind of damage types and the same kind of consuming a single corpse for most of them anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't seen much from Detonate Dead in a while, but it's getting updated in this as well. Hopefully for the better, so that we can see the rise of the corpse explosioning once again. But yeah, we do have that a lot of theme of interacting with corpses, which please don't take that out of context. I feel like I'm on a list now, but a lot of these are combo skills basically. So I kind of want to ask, like, how you feel, and how, like, GG feels, I guess, as a whole, about skills that require a combo with another skill. So we've got, like, on Earth here on screen. This spawns a corpse that you can then detonate. So these skills that need kind of two skills to function.
Yeah, it's a very divisive topic. Some players just hate it. Some of our balanced team have just said, I don't play a build that requires using two skills alternating. They just want one skill to do all the work. But then others really enjoy it. It was a real gamble when we introduced Contagion and Essence Strain together, because there's a good chance that I was assuming some people would just not enjoy it, but we were like, we'll try it out. And there was definitely a subset of players who really enjoyed that 1-2 punch, destroy everything. So we definitely tried to make sure that these 1-2 skills are significantly more powerful than a single, like 2 casts of a single cast skill, but require more tactics, more thinking to work out. The corpse skills have the nice extra edge of, once they get going, you only need to use the corpse destroying skill once you've created a few corpses from the recently living. And so it's got a bit of a different feel than the general, like, press 1-2, press 1-2, press 1-2, repeat on each pack, which is more enjoyable. It's a different style again, but it still has that same feeling. The thing we talked about with this, we're like, do we want to make more of these? And the answer from one person was just, we've got a lot of skills that you cast one of and it does all the work. There's plenty of stuff like that for people to play, and we will still introduce skills like that going alongside the stuff. It just happens that this particular patch includes 3 combo skills to an extent, or 3 or 4.
Like, personally, I love combo skills. I love the idea of it. The problem often ends up being is that mobs die too quickly for that to happen. Yeah. So kind of like, how do you feel like that plays into the way that Path of Exile actually plays at the moment? Yeah,
it's definitely, they handle tougher content better, but easier content is a lot slower for them, which is, it's a challenge. We try and make it so that the one part of it can still be, well, the lesson we learned from Essence Drain is make it so one part of it is enough to take out regular mobs, and then you include the second part when you need that extra oomph. This doesn't necessarily work too well with the corpse skills, but then you have the detonating of existing corpses for that. So that's something we are trying to do with future 1-2 skills, but we'll probably have the next few skills will be coming in future will probably be one-off skills, just for a break from the combos.
Yeah, Essence Drain and Contagion seem to work because it's got that slow setup that some people don't like because it's too slow, but it's got that slow setup and then a big payoff. This, I imagine, you had to balance a little differently though, because you have that setup, but then, like you said, once there's corpses, you can just keep rolling based on that, almost like setting up a Vol skill, somewhat. Yeah, it's one of the skills, the Cremation, I believe it's called. Yeah, that's what we called it in the end. That has a very interesting of, like, you cast it once and then it destroys the entire pack, even a tough pack. But you have a limited number of them and you need corpses to start with, and that's very effective. That sort of plays completely different from the other ones, like the Fiery Orbs. The
The Volatile Dead is not almost a once you've got one pack of monsters that are dead, then you can just go from pack to pack and the orbs will travel with you and take out everything as you go. Occasionally you need to refresh corpses and bring them up, so it's less of a 1-2 skill and more of a 1-2-2-2, occasionally a 1. So they all have very different playstyles that you can't really fit into that one group. The Detonate Dead still has that feel of like, yeah, it's definitely more work, but then we turned the damage of it way up and we turned the area, it grows quite a bit towards the late game, so feels very powerful regardless. Yeah, it's worth it to see those explosions.
That makes sense because we've got Detonate Dead requiring a lot more work on average because it's got that kind of small AoE. It doesn't have that like following you like the Volatiles. But then you got that Volatile, which is almost like not even a combo skill. Like it uses corpses technically, but for the most part, it's going to be doing all the work itself. So they look really juicy. So let's jump into like discussing them specifically. So first is like the starting piece, the combo piece, and that's Unearth. So we already had like Desecrate, and that's getting changed, so it'll have less of a cooldown in the future. So it'll be potentially a viable option as well. But Unearth allows you to spawn corpses more quickly if you use multiple projectiles, which is somewhat interesting. The question I have though is, does the amount of corpses able to be spawned, can you like improve that from 7? It lists on the skill gem at level 1, 7 max corpses. Does that increase ever, or is that the hard limit?
We haven't buffed it to 10 since we revealed the gem. It's currently set at 10. And we've talked about having sources to let it go. We've set it up in a way where you can introduce items that increase the number of corpses you can have active, but it currently doesn't have that. There's no way to do that at the moment, so it is just limited to 10. If you somehow end up with more than 10 projectiles fired at once, then it will keep all of the corpses. It has the projectile number max above the corpse limit, but that's sort of a hidden extra bonus mechanic just to stop it looking bad, really. But if you, say, put it on a Sire of Shards and do some crazy stuff, then you can get lots of corpses at once.
The exploits. Rory, you gave me this GIF here earlier. I just want to show people. You gave me this GIF here earlier, but I was hoping we'd have a chance to use it, but so far you've only been saying things that have been buffed. You haven't said anything that's been nerfed yet, so...
There are some nerfs, but...
I'm a bit disappointed. I haven't had a chance to use the nerf GIF yet.
You'll have a chance to use it before the day's over, I think. But, yeah.
Good stuff, good stuff.
The awkwardest part of making that was when the pizza guy came up the drive while I was doing it and just saw what we were doing.
You flip out your wallet to pay him. Got a nerf symbol in there. So back to Unearth anyway. The other really important part of this skill is what are the corpses like, because we actually have skills that care about that. In terms of HP, percentage HP damage dealt on basically all of these skills. So, corpses.
So they're better than the worst corpses that you can get with Desecrate. So they're more reliable, but they're nowhere near as effective as that when you get a really, really juicy giant monster, like a Devourer or a Beast or something like that. It won't have that level of explosion. But they are always going to be skeletons, skeleton archers. So if you really wanted to just not care about the life of your specters and just have GMPs supported, or a projectile supported spectre, then you have these reliable things to go on, which isn't something you would usually do, but we've got something coming that will help if you want that sort of play style.
I'm thinking, okay, just time for speculation.
I think we're going to be revealing that soon, so you can look for
one of the new ones. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, all right. I'll leave that there for you.
But yeah, the goal with the skill was to be a completely reliable corpse generator. We didn't, like, Desecrate's cooldown is shorter now. It's much more frequent. You can use it, keep it up almost all the time, but we just wanted it to be a thing that is 100% reliable. Like, you're never going to not be able to drop corpses for skills like Detonate Dead, where you constantly want to be making corpses if there's a tough enemy about. Especially useful for bosses and things like that. A full-on Detonate Dead character might want to have both skills just to maximize how many corpses they can have in play at once and how many they can generate per second.
Because they can have separate corpse limits, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So for a boss, you could stack corpses from both of them in the area before engaging said boss and then blowing them up. Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
So Unearth seems like purely a combo skill for use with the other skills. It does have physical damage on its projectile.
Yeah.
Will that be viable as a main skill once it scales up, or just kind of flavor?
It does decent damage, but the way that it lays down the damage isn't really easy to play with. It isn't really an effective thing. We have a threshold jewel planned to give it, if you really want it to be your primary skill, then we're going to give you an option to do that. But it's not ready for 3.10, sadly. So hopefully we'll have it come shortly afterwards, but it includes some new effects and stuff, so it's a bit more work than the average threshold jewel just because it escalated a bit. But yeah.
I was going to say, Unearth seems like, if you're going to use it as a main skill for some reason, it seems like Tornado Shot without the secondary projectiles.
Yeah. So you can do it, you need to aim off the edge of the screen all the time, and...
Yeah, sounds a bit awkward, but maybe... I'd laugh if the threshold jewel is like turns it into Tornado Shot, gives it secondary projectiles. Though what I could maybe see is, I actually when I first saw this skill, what I thought it was going to be was you would shoot the projectiles and then it would put a corpse down that would then turn into a skeletal archer and shoot enemies for you. That's what I actually thought it was going to be.
Also something we talked about, something we still want to do in future. So maybe another thing that we want to do. But yeah. Until then, you've got to have some crazy setup with triggered Ray Spectre if you want to do that. But,
okay, all right. Okay, so next on the chopping block, or the exploding block, we have Body Swap. The GIF I've got here is with totems, which people were talking about a lot, so we finally got to see that. Body Swap is like the darkest skill I think this game has ever released. Like, this is what happens to the original you when you teleport. Are you teleported, or are you just destroyed and a new you is created at the other end? Can you answer that question?
That's a question for philosophers, really. Like, if you are destroyed utterly and then recreated from someone else's body, like, is it still you? I mean, you still have the same feelings and desires, although maybe something feels like it's missing. It's hard.
I love the idea that you lose a little something every time you use this skill.
We did talk about it adding to your death counter, or just adding 1 to your death counter the first time you use it, but...
and you get people in hardcore with a /1 death still in hardcore. Just to confirm for people, this doesn't kill you in hardcore, correct?
No. I mean...
Okay, good.
Yeah, it doesn't.
I mean,
maybe it kills the original you, but something continues to play on. So
the original you goes to standard, and a new you continues on in hardcore. God.
And we also have an awesome new effect that we got some awesome tech for, so that you're coated in blood when you at the end of the teleport, which drips off you after a bit as you're remade. You can kind of see it on the totem a little bit there. It's coated in blood, but it's real cool. Hopefully we get more of that stuff as you're remade from flesh.
Oh, okay. I thought you were memeing on me for a second there, but no, legit. I can see the blood spatters on there.
It looks real cool for characters when you're spamming it and just end up completely drenched.
Oh, so we're potentially getting some gore splatter technology or something happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, is spatter the right word or splatter? I don't know. Dexter would correct me. Anywho, it definitely doesn't work with Cast on Death, right?
It probably moves your body to another, like, your corpse goes somewhere else. I mean, your corpse is repositioned.
Your Cast on Death skills are triggering in standard.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. In another realm. Serious questions now. How did the delay mechanics work? Because it does seem to have a bit of a delay. And can it be tinkered with at all?
It doesn't actually have a delay. It has an effect that plays when you start casting the animation, but at the same time you would cast, like, say, Flame Dash. That'll be the point you teleport. Like, it is partway through your cast animation, and it's instantaneous. As long as the corpse that you targeted at the start of the cast animation is still there, then it will just teleport you right away.
Okay, so basically faster casting would speed that up because it'll shorten your cast animation. Okay.
There's no duration on the skill or anything like that can be modified. It's just a instant teleport that just requires a corpse.
Good stuff, good stuff. So, have you seen this used as, I'm curious, have you seen this used in testing as a main skill? And how you expecting to perform? Because to me it seems like it's Flicker Strike, like it's such a crazy skill, but it's like, it's Flicker Strike that requires corpses, so I'm like wondering how that works out.
Yeah, it's... I've definitely tried using it. The totem version I found to be the most fun and reliable and not like crazy teleporting all over the place. But we're still tweaking the damage a little bit. We don't want it to be better than, say, Detonate Dead for just doing damage.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have any added damage of its own, so it's purely based on your life and the corpse life. So it's not crazy damage. But then if you're casting it pretty rapidly, it does have decent area, and it does do double explosions, and it does care about their corpse life. So a Fire Spectre character could end up being pretty effective with it. We're going to make sure that you can do a crazy build with it, although it'll be a lot of work generating and detonating those corpses all over the place.
Okay, so the corpse HP damage has been confirmed that it won't be reflectable.
That's right.
Forwards. Is that the same for player HP damage from this?
No, that will be reflectable.
Okay, so you want to hit a reflect mob with the other end and not you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. It means you can play around reflect a bit, but we have some words for that later on. So let's just leave that one for the moment and move on to Spell Cascade, which looks super juicy. It's actually a support gem. As you can see, it's linked with the Detonate Dead rework here in the GIF. What sort of limitations does Spell Cascade have? Basically what it does is you select a cast location, and then before and after it in a row, it repeats that. So what does and doesn't work with it?
So it requires you to be self-casting. You can't rely on totems or anything like that to do it. It sadly doesn't work with channeled skills, just because of our limitations there. And it requires an area-targeted skill, which isn't something we've really had to classify before, but something that always casts around you won't work. It does work with all the corpse skills, because they're a corpse in a location targeted, so it works with all of the new skills, all the new corpse explosion ones. And the other limitation really is that the positioning is spaced out. They're always spaced out in a way that they won't overlap more than once. So you can get double hits if you position it carefully with your area skills.
Right, so the middle one overlaps with the one before it a bit and the one after it a bit, but you're not going to get the first and third ones overlapping ever. Yeah,
the exception to that is the corpse skills. If you happen to have corpses clustered tightly together, they can overlap which ones they detonate, and so you can get a bit of a damage overlap there, but it's a bit tricky to reliably do.
Oh, right, so if you like desecrate spam in the same spot a bunch, or in like a specific clustering, you could have it cascade right on top of itself. Because it's basically an AoE, and then it's targeting a corpse somewhere in that AoE, right?
So all of the new supports were made to have supports that don't just boost your damage, that do something crazy with them. So all of them have some special mechanics going on to allow that, and this was definitely one of the ones that we've wanted to do crazy stuff with area skills. We've kind of wanted to do GMP or chain for area skills for a while. The closest we ever got before was Echo, but now we kind of have the tech to do some crazier things like this. So,
technology is finally there. What's the craziest setup you've seen using this?
I think Volatile Dead looks the craziest, because the sheer number of orbs of corpses that are created, if you have enough corpses, it almost instantly creates a huge wave of death.
Yeah, I got the gift for that here. It looks pretty good. So I was someone in chat was asking, it doesn't work with Flame Blast. You mentioned that it doesn't work with any channels AoE skills, which I thought Flame Blast was the one when I first saw this that I was like, oh, that's going to be broken, because it would pick 2 points and then the AoE would expand out such that it would overlap like a bunch of times. So that's not going to be a problem, I guess. You guys kind of saved yourself a little bit there. I would say pre Rory nerfed it. Oh, it shows the GIF. Yes. I'm going to work the GIF in wherever I can. Perfect. So that's it for Cascade. We've also got another one here, another support that's that AoE kind of focused, which is Volley. So this one was the mechanic for this was originally demonstrated in an unreleased Threshold duel for Split Arrow.
Yes.
Which was, for whatever reason, wasn't released. Maybe you can give some insight into that.
Well, the original reason we didn't release it for Split Arrow was that we had it so that every projectile you have adds another row out. So once you ended up with enough projectiles with Split Arrow, you had an incredibly long thing that most of the time wasn't working because there was a rock in the way that stopped it spreading out further, or a wall. It just was terrible indoors. But it also let you shoot around corners to an insane degree. Like, you never have to look at a monster in the face anymore. You just shoot arrows around corners. So the limitation with this one is that you can't have more than 5 points that the projectiles are coming from. So by default, you'll have 3 because it gives +2 projectiles. But straight out of the bat, if you used it with ethereal knives or something like that, you're only going to get 5 points, and then you're just going to have the projectiles evenly split among those points. So it goes wide, but not that wide.
There was a picture released on Reddit from one of the other devs, I think, at the moment. I don't have here, but basically it showed that, so you have those 5 points yourself and 2 points on either side, and then as you add extra projectiles, it starts adding Vs on each of those. So it's like they're new characters, basically, that like a GMP arcing setup is coming from.
Yeah. So if you have 10 projectiles, then each of the points is shooting 2 in a V shape, and if you have 15, then you've got a LMP cone coming from each of them.
I really like the look of that, by the way, when you have like 10, and it reminds me of kind of like a phalanx setup or something like that. You got this crisscrossing, every arrow is protecting the arrow to his left. I don't know, I'm just geeking out a little bit. So, well, that answered my second question as well, prematurely, so well done. And then the final question is honestly just a meme question. Like, there's not too much asked about this. Does it work with Sire of Shards?
So, Novaing currently doesn't work, sadly, but we are going to make it work. It's just a time-consuming code change to make, which we're a little short on time at this point. So wait until we've got a safe thing where we can have each of those points have projectiles novering from them.
Oh, what? Hold on a moment. I wasn't expecting that answer. I was just expecting no, but actually potentially in the future? What?
Yeah, when we have a bit more time to get it right. There's a few things with these support gems where we're like, oh man, these interactions could be even awesomer when we allow it to work with more things. But for now, we've just got to go with what we know will work and won't have the programmers spend 2 weeks trying to get it to function.
Yeah, put the expansion on hold for 2 weeks while we get this done. Okay, that's crazy. I'll leave that for the future though, but I can't even imagine. Okay, that was very unexpected, Rory. You jumped in dropping bombs. Okay, let's move on to Volatile Dead, which is originally Cremation was my favorite, but I think this might be my favorite now because it just looks so crazy. Basically, you destroy a corpse and it creates Volatile that follows the enemies instead of you. Revenge time. Yep,
the design came from, can we give players the ability to make volatile orbs of their own? So this is effectively a way to make your corpses ranged, and they're kind of intelligent. They, just like volatiles, speed up a bit the longer they've been active, so they chase down monsters faster and faster, so monsters get to enjoy the same horrid experience of fleeing for their lives. They detonate much faster than volatiles, though, so they're much more reliable in quickly dishing out damage.
It's not like the monsters are going to be intentionally dodging them or anything anyway, unless you got some new AI in the works we don't know about.
No, but they don't like start detonating and then the monster just keeps running, and that was what happened at first. They all just ran up and charged up, and the monsters just kept walking. And
oh no, now I'm imagining if the monsters had like the ability to dodge and computer controlled dodging skills. Oh no. Alright, let's leave that.
But yeah, now it's just a wave of destruction. And they do a thing where they kind of split up among multiple monsters if there are multiple targets intelligently. But if there's only one target, then they'll all just go for that. Or if there's a one close by target, then they'll focus on it. So you can kind of control where they go against bosses, things like that.
Right, so they're not like overlapping and overkilling a single trash mob, for example?
They will a bit. You can see in the GIF that they're doing it a bit with those guys, but they're not. But you can see others are going off to hunt down ones that haven't been killed yet off screen.
Yeah, there's a few kind of going south. Cool. So what's the range on these guys? They seem to travel a long way in some of the video footage.
I'm I'm not actually sure how far they pick up targets, but they do last a reasonable long time. Like they will keep going as long as they keep seeing things, they'll move after them. But they have to actually be able to see that enemy, and they have a limited sight range, which I don't know off the top of my head, but it's fairly large.
Okay, so you can't, like, if there's no monsters around whatsoever.
Yeah, they won't follow you like me.
Okay, they're not going to follow you around. Right. Well, that ruins my final question then. Sad face. All right. Is there a limit on how many of these you can have out at once, or is it just limited by the amount of corpses you can destroy?
We're still tweaking it. We definitely need to make sure it's not a situation of you spawn corpses and spawn these for 10 minutes before a boss fight and then just watch it burn. So there's a time limitation on at the moment. We might have a number limitation, but it'll be fairly high just to stop you doing the one-shotting a boss setup.
Right,
but
just for like
we'll stop you doing it too
cases.
Easily, let's put it that way.
I'm sure it's still going to happen a bit. Yeah, and that was my final question. Basically, I thought they would originally kind of like follow the player a bit. So I was like, can I train an entire map's worth of volatile orbs to the boss to obliterate them? But it seems like not exactly, unless you can spawn enough corpses yourself, right?
Yeah.
All right, good to know. Seems like a super juicy skill. I don't have any other questions based on that. Since you ruined all of my plans, so thanks. Thanks once again, Rory, for the premature pre-release Rory nerves. Thanks, mate. Thanks. I'm getting made that into a GIF. I'm gonna get that made into a GIF emote, guys. By the way, totally.
Awesome. Well, that effort was not for nothing. Not for nothing.
well worth it. The mean value is fine. Cremation is the next skill, which is spawns a little volcano that shoots out a bunch of projectiles from a corpse as well, not just from the ground this time. How are the something that was mentioned that I was interested about is like the projectiles are spread out over time. Could you explain that mechanic?
Yeah, I mean it's quite similar to how Stormburst spreads out as projectiles, but every in this case every set of the projectiles are cast per second. So if the skill says fires 4 projectiles, then it does 1 every quarter of a second. And then it does that for its duration, which at the moment is 8 seconds. So you get quite like 8 times as many projectiles total as the skill has in it on the gem pop-up.
Okay, right. So if you have fires 8 projectiles, then it'll do 8 per second.
So GMP turns into a fairly decent damage boost, but also it just means you're getting more ruckus per second.
Ruckus. You guys like that word. It comes up every now and then.
It's Neon's favorite top word. So.
I hear it a lot. I keep hearing it a lot from you guys. So you can only have 3 of these at once, though. That's kind of the limitation there.
There is an enchant from Uber Lab that allows you to have a 4th, but yes.
Oh, okay. Only from Uber, so there's not like a Merciless and Uber one?
Yeah, I mean, I might as well mention a nerf that's coming for some stuff. Well, sort of nerf, where we're going to have some enchants be some of the more powerful enchants, especially for the new skills, just from Uber Lab, because previously we had to make 2 tiers of them, and 1 tier like of any stat was very powerful, so we couldn't have 2 tiers for some of the cool stuff we wanted to do. So this will just let us have some more exciting enchants for more different skills.
Yeah, you guys have learned from Barrage, I guess.
Yep, that might be one of the ones that's only going to be Uber Lab, but I don't know for sure what the balanced result of that is. So I won't give you values or anything yet. But.
I'm just going to full screen the Rory nerf for a second.
I done.
Beautiful. I like it. We had to work some nerfs in here. I'm personally glad. It was pretty hard to find footage of this next one. So instead I've just got the thing up here. There's a little tiny bit of footage, but it wasn't really enough to even put into a GIF. So Ancestral Call. This is kind of it's basically a support gem for melee that will allow you to hit multiple enemies at once. So you'll hit the initial target and then 2 other ones. How are those targeted exactly?
There's a min and max range that they'll find targets, so they won't go after the same enemy because it's too close to where you're hitting, but they will go after other enemies around it or slightly further away. So it's kind of like a splash that hits 3 targets. The big difference being that it performs the effect of the skill each time on each of those targets. So for effects like Molten Strike, you'll get 3 ancestors that are shooting out these the orbs at once, and for Wild Strike, you'll get 3 fire explosions or lightning chains or ice projectiles.
That sounds super juicy, and it's different to, in case you guys are confused a little bit, because just from the description it's a bit hard to tell, but it's not like multi-strike in which you repeat them one after the other. It's all at the exact same time, so you just hit once, which should give it a really kind of like oomphy play style, I imagine, where you just like bam, bam, just like AoEing stuff down.
There might be a tiny delay, but just so the sound doesn't sync up and so it looks a little bit more natural, but yeah, it's very close to, like, within 1 attack cast time, you'll have hit 3 enemies.
Oh, like you hit and then the spirits kind of spawn slightly after that, so it looks a bit cooler.
I think maybe it is all at once. I don't know. It's so close together that I don't remember whether it's all at once or in very short succession. Yeah.
Okay. Is there any skills that we'd expect to not work with this, or to work with this that don't, because, like, for various reasons?
I'm pretty sure everything that works with melee splash works with this. So it's just the single target stuff. It's not you're not getting triple earthquake chasms or anything like that.
Right.
No triple sunder, but all the things that splash works with are going to be work with full effect with this.
Right. Okay. So it works like melee splash is maybe a little bit inaccurate though, because melee splash doesn't get you any extra secondary effects, while this does. Correct.
That is the big difference. Yeah. This started out as a melee chaining support idea where we wanted all of your attacks to shoot a bolt of lightning, but then we're like, we have this other idea for ghost attack guys. Let's just combine it into a multi-hitting ghost attack skill. So the ancestor effects are being improved at the moment, which is why we didn't have a GIF for it, but they're looking pretty cool. So
yeah, okay. So let's just kind of like go through a few skills I'm interested in real quick. Lightning Strike works as you'd expect. Just shoots lightning in all directions.
Heaps of projectiles.
Okay, cool. Frost Blades, because it's a single targeted melee skill, correct?
Yes, that will work. At the moment, the programmers are doing special case coding for it because it's a tricky one. But yes, that will work. I'm not quite sure how it's going to look when the little ancestors are shooting out the swords at the targets, but we'll see. It should be cool.
Well, I mean, it already, if you take the time to think about it, it already looks a little weird that you're just kind of like hacking at something from range. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah. And another one is Static Strike, because it spawns a secondary effect on your character instead.
Yeah, so this will spawn 3 secondary effects on your character at once. You get triple explosions going off. So this one kind of does do lots of damage focused around the player, unlike the spread out ancestor parts. So cool. Yeah, that's cool. You'll see the number 3 turn up rather than number 1 every time you hit an enemy when you gain a stack. So
okay, cool. Rad.
It looks pretty cool as well. Yeah.
All right, that's pretty juicy. Chat's excited about that one.
Yeah, we talked about, do we want to buff Static Strike for this patch, but then we'll see how good Ancestral Call is with it first, because it might not need it.
Yeah, that might be enough. Okay, I'll be interested to see how that works.
Yeah.
So unlike multi-strike, each attack must target different targets though, correct?
Yes, that is right.
Yep, okay. And to follow on from that, if there are no viable targets, will it attack the ground and create secondary effects?
Nah, there need to be targets there.
Okay, so if you're using, say, let's say Lightning Strike, where you might attack the ground from a range to attack the enemies, your regular attack will work, but the spirits won't appear and spawn 2 extra attacks.
Yep.
There needs to be actual targets there.
Yeah, it has a reasonably long range, I think, with the max spirit range. So, or maybe not long, medium large. So it's got a fair decent range on it. But yeah, it doesn't mean that you can just stand all the way on the other side of the area and do it.
So the idea with this was really to turn a lot of the interesting single target skills that have secondary effects into AoE skills a bit more, right? Yeah. Rather than making a boss killing here. Like, it sounds like, yeah, it doesn't really sound like there's much boss killing potential with this. This is something we'd have a separate setup. We'll take this out for a boss kill, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Because we are running close to your hour, you mentioned.
What? That was quick.
I know. I'm wondering if I should skip ahead to the Reflect Rework reveal, or whether we'd have enough time to just talk very briefly about War for the Atlas. How are you going?
Let's talk about the war.
Okay, all right, cool. Let's just pop this up. So, War for the Atlas. I'm just gonna shrink this down just a few quick rapid-fire questions. So, when and how do we fight the Elder? Is it possible that it's earlier, like people are saying?
So there's a new Zana quest chain, or just a quest chain that travels through maps, and during this quest chain you will unlock the ability for the Elder to turn up on the Atlas, and that's when you'll start encountering the Elder-infused zones, and then when you do Elder-infused zones eventually, or when you do any maps, I believe, there'll be a chance for the Elder to turn up with his goons on the Atlas itself for you to go take on. So the area they'll turn up will be based on what sort of maps you're in at the point. So you will fight him earlier or later, depending on where you are in the Atlas at the point where he spawns.
Okay, so it's not like you'd need to get to the tier 16, then the tier 17 quotation marks map in order to face him.
The Shaper will still be the final fight in the Atlas.
Okay, but I do recall something about like the ultimate versions of his Guardians available in the center if he overtakes that, or is that not a thing? Am I getting confused?
We're still working on that. I'll have to get back to you on that real soon.
Okay.
We'll have more info on that soon. But yeah, there will be an even more insane Elder thing. But yeah, if you're doing red tier maps, then you're going to be fighting a very tough Elder when he spawns there.
Right, so that was my follow-up question. Like, if we're able to encounter him earlier, is there like different sets of potential rewards for facing him earlier, later, and then eventually like on par with Shaper? I assume you can eventually get to that sort of power.
That's right.
Okay, so there'll be different uniques, I presume, available, but this might be a secret at the moment.
That is a secret, yes.
Okay, all right, good. Well, that's one of the big kind of like questions or confusion points that people have been having. So that is good to know. And the final one is kind of like, how do you feel like this interacts with the sextant/shaped map meta of people just running the same map over and over?
Yeah.
How much, like, well, let's just go from there.
Well, our goal with this, or one of the goals with this, other than just adding awesome stuff to the game, was to have more reward for moving around the Atlas and doing other things on the Atlas, getting more nodes. The Elder will turn up at a point at the same tier of maps you're doing, but it could be maps that you haven't fully unlocked yet. So you're missing out on some content if you're just doing a small cluster of maps over and over again. Eventually the Elder might find his way there, but it's not going to be something you're encountering as frequently. So this is really a reward for spreading out. We're not going to make it so you just can't do whatever strategies you were doing before. We're just making it so that you're missing out on some rewards. They're not the most... they are the efficient for some effects, but not for other rewards. So if people are only doing shaped sextant specific maps, then the amount of Elder and Shaper items in the economy are going to drop down, and they'll become much more valuable, and so you'll be much more rewarded for spreading out your Atlas and doing all of that stuff.
Right, so a bit of kind of like economic auto-balancing should play a role, you think? Yep. Okay. So you've like, it sounded like you're more focusing on rewarding spreading out rather than like punishing what people were already doing. Do you think that people might get into a system where they're like, run the map and then not kill the boss so that they don't cleanse that area, I guess? Because that's how it works, right? You kill the boss and it cleanses the area.
They're just doing content in maps, like doing a certain portion of maps can shift the balance of power in the war. So there is stuff going on just beyond just killing the boss itself. And there's a little bit of secrets with that stuff, so you don't know exactly what it is that's shifting the war around, but that will mean that you do want to be if you're not killing the bosses, then firstly you're getting less rewards because you're not getting the Elder and Shaper items that boss may have dropped, but it also the Atlas will be shifting anyway, so it could move away from you. You just lose control at that point if you're not wiping out everything.
Ah, thank you, Rory. That is very intriguing. I like that because on the last podcast I was on, we were quite concerned that this would be too gamey in the way that people would just like not kill bosses and would just kind of keep, you know, just running that same map and treat the corruption like an extra sextant mod, basically. But that's a lot more engaging. That there's going to be kind of different ways of it shifting around. Good to know. Okay. We're running pretty late on time, so I'm going to jump into the big kahuna announcement, Rory, that people have been waiting for. And, I mean, even me, it was teased last time I was there in New Zealand that you guys were considering it for last expansion, but here we are, finally. Reflect, rework. Rory, what's happening with Reflect, buddy?
So
lay it down.
We're keeping the mod on maps, the one that says the monsters reflect 20% of elemental damage, but the mod on rare monsters is going to be changed. So you'll no longer get a mod that just they reflect a certain percentage of the damage they take of that type. Instead, you're going to get new Nemesis mods that will, whenever you hit them with elemental damage or whenever you hit them with physical damage, they will counterattack with a mortar that you can avoid. And that has a cooldown on it, so you don't get 100 mortars if you hit them really rapidly. And it doesn't do damage based on the damage you dealt. I mean, it does. If it's an elemental reflect, it'll do a combined fire, cold, lightning projectile for a set amount of damage based on its level. So you don't have the danger of one-shotting yourself if you're doing a huge amount of damage. And everyone needs to be just as wary of these things. We originally had them planned so that reflect damage reduction would reduce the damage that you would take from these projectiles, but that's not quite working. So in future, that'll be the plan. But for now, you just have to mitigate it with the usual mitigation means.
Rory, I got the biggest smile on my face right now, buddy. Rory can't see me, by the way, because I can't share camera with Skype and OBS at the same time, but I got the biggest smile on my face, man. That is so good to hear. Alright, so let's break this down bit by bit. I love this. Okay, so the map mods are staying, and that makes sense because you can choose whether or not you engage in those. You can re-roll your maps as a way of dealing with that. So was that your thought there?
Yeah. I mean, you'll still be rolling the dice when you do an un-ID'd map, but obviously you notice fairly quickly when that happens. So, yeah.
Yeah, always test on a single mob before moving through the map. Right. Okay, so good to know. And then just to reiterate, we have a new Nemesis mod that will spawn. And is this basically like as often as we would have been seeing these reflect mobs in the past, or just replay like? They're completely removed and we're seeing these guys instead now?
Yeah, we're replacing basically the chance with these ones instead. We intend to have more variation of these kind of reflect mechanics, because this one has a certain way of countering it, and is kind of countered more effectively by just killing the monster really fast, because you get fewer procs because of the internal cooldown. So we're going to look at other different similar mechanics. Some will care about the damage you deal, but not deal it out instantly as previously reflected. But for now, it's just going to be this one, and then we will split this one's chance up among other mechanics when we introduce other reflect-style mechanics.
Oh, that's intriguing. See, I like this. You're actually taking a mechanic that I've kind of found to be pretty boring and turning it into something that we're going to be a bit more engaged with, and seeing mobs that might have different reflect mechanics potentially in the future, so that you're like, each time you fight one, you're like, oh, I gotta deal with this a certain way. Ah, okay. So they shoot a mortar. Does this kind of look a bit like a magma orb sort of deal?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the way it's set up. It takes just as long to land whether you're in melee or whether you're at range, and it has a minimum range. So a melee character can strafe around the target when they see it happening. They don't need to just run out of all the way out of the radius if they're right up close. But range characters have just as much time to dodge. So there's no difference in challenge between melee and ranged for this particular mechanic.
See, when people have kind of like discussed potentially doing something like this, now it was always the discussion was like it'd be too punishing for either melee or range, depending on how you designed it. So this you feel is fairly even for both. Yeah,
we've tried to create something as fair as possible. Kill everyone equally.
Well done. That seems somewhat challenging to do, but that sounds good then. Oh man, That is fantastic. I don't know if I have any other questions with that, but that's oh wait, yeah. How's the damage on that base? So is it like a main hand kind of damage like what we've seen in the past?
We're going to have a fixed amount of damage, so regardless of what monster you're up against, it'll be pretty similar. It'll just be based on the level you're in.
Okay, and is this because it's kind of like on a cooldown and you're not going to like barrage and get 50 of them at once? Is this how much damage are we talking here? Like, what are you kind of looking to balance? Obviously, you're not going to keep me numbers, but
yeah, we're still tweaking that stuff, so we haven't got the numbers nailed down just yet.
But are we talking like this is going to one-shot you or take you low enough that another mob could kill you with a stray arrow, or it's just like taking a bit of a chunk and you're like, oh, that hurt?
It'll probably vary at different levels. Definitely early on, we're not going to, before you've learnt the mechanic properly, we're not going to, but in-game it'll definitely be something you'll need to be wary of. Similar to volatile orbs, where you've got to be real cautious of them, especially if you're in a tough spot.
Okay. So the other thing is, like, I guess just to kind of address this aspect that people have always talked about with Reflect is, the kind of the consensus or the feeling was that Reflect needed to be in the game to deal with characters that are just too strong and like clear too fast, right? So I guess how do you feel around that topic then, now that you're designing Reflect into this more mechanical kind of system that can be played around?
That's kind of something we're hoping to bring back a bit with more mechanics that we introduce. We don't want to take that out, but for this brief period at least, that there isn't really any counter for that sort of extreme damage stuff, other than just nerfing it wherever I can. Just but yeah, it is at the moment the hitting as hard and fast as you can is the best way to counter that mechanic, which counter the new Reflect mechanic, which isn't ideal considering the theme of Reflect, but we'll bring that back in another form wherever we can.
Okay, so I like the idea of kind of putting this in there and seeing whether it's a big deal, whether it's a problem, and then you can add more different Reflect mechanics that are engaging that do help with that. So ones that punish the guys that try to one-shot enemies, or like a really one-shotting or something, I guess.
Something that somehow absorbs your damage and then pushes it back at you if you don't evade it.
Okay, I like the sounds of that. Cool, I really look forward to seeing what you guys do with that in the future. Because Jeff's going to hate me if I don't ask this one last final question. Back on Ancestral Call topic, does it work with Flicker Strike? Travis spamming me.
Yes, and the ancestors spawn by you and flicker at other nearby targets, I believe. What? That was the plan.
Okay, alright. That's incredible. There you go, chat. That's better answer than I could have hoped for. I thought it would be like kind of you would flicker and then it would attack mobs near you or something, but if they're actually flickering out themselves, that's so
I'm pretty
good.
Sure. I don't know if that's been done yet, but that's definitely like there's a lot of programmer time going into each individual skill, making sure it works nicely. So yeah.
Oh, that sounds challenging to program. So I'll be impressed if you guys manage to get that done in time. So good luck coding developers. RNG's a speed to you. Well, Rory, thank you very much for coming and spending more than an hour on the show here and answering so many questions and so many juicy bombs of information and plenty of... You did give me a few opportunities to use the Rory GIF, so...
That's good.
I do appreciate that. So thank you so much, Rory. Appreciate it. Look forward to playing the expansion.
Yeah, I hope you have fun.
Alrighty, I'll catch you later, mate.
See you later.
See ya.
Catch you around.
Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. This was very, very cool. Hopefully you got some juicy nuggets of information out of it. I spent the last 2 days preparing the show and making sure that it would be nice and juicy for you guys. So hopefully it turned out good and hopefully you enjoyed it. What's going to be happening with me, right? Ziggy, you've been playing space games a lot and yet you do a Path of Exile podcast? I thought you quit PoE forever. Well, I've been playing PoE at launch, my dudes, because I have embraced and committed to taking an actual break from PoE, because PoE does have a way of not letting you play any other games ever. Every time I go to play another game, they like announce some races or something. I never get away from the game. This has happened for many years now, and I decided it was finally time to actually, you know, play some other games, and I've been having a good time. So, and that's just gonna get me back to Path of Exile Very refreshed, so I'm looking forward to that. Also, I am really looking forward to the new expansion, because I loved what the last expansion did in terms of leveling, but as a long-term player, I lost interest pretty quickly, because once I had gotten through that a few times, there's not really much to end game, and we can all agree that Harbinger was not amazing. So it didn't really hold my interest that much. So I kind of like my interest waned pretty quickly in Harbinger, and I'm sure you guys had a lot of you guys had a similar experience. So what we really need, and what I was really hoping for out of this expansion announcement, was a much more endgame focused experience. Something that increased both the variety of what we were doing and also the depth of it. I was really looking forward to some more engaging, kind of deeper mechanics to go into. And I mean, on paper, at least, this expansion seems to be doing that. Pretty much what I was hoping for in terms of an endgame expansion. So I'm pretty excited about that. I mean, a lot of it's going to come down to execution, how well this mechanic works out, whether we actually end up wanting to engage in it, anything like that. But if it does work like it says on paper and based on like Rory and some of the other devs have been saying, then it could be it could be really good. Beachhead runs equals 1 brain cell. So I'm very much looking forward to that, but I am going to continue to embrace my break until the new expansion launch, so that's why I've avoided both the races. Even though I do love racing, I decided to embrace that. I believe Ancestral plus Melee Splash does work, Eldragon. It just adds a secondary effect, man. So you can apparently do that from my understanding of it. Valpact. Last I heard about Valpact, from talking with either Chris or Rory about it, was that well, no, I think Chris mentioned that what Jonathan showed is potentially not final, but that it is going to be getting changed in some fashion. So we don't know exactly just yet. So if you're only interested in watching some ZiggyD PoE, I'll be seeing you guys on the 8th for the expansion, which I look forward to embracing wholeheartedly, nice and refreshed, enthusiastic, with a bit of a positive mental attitude. And in the meantime, though, I will be playing some. I'll be playing some space games, probably. So, that should be, well, the space games I've been playing have been pretty juicy, so you may enjoy tuning in for a bit of that. Thank you very much for tuning in. That is going to be it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you guys later.